Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Black British Parent Podcast. And I'm your host, Debbie. And today we have an amazing guest, Barbara Walters-Ennis. I said it right, yeah?
You have said it right.
I want to say that I'm just going to give a little intro about you. Barbara is a social worker, a long-time foster carer, and the founder of Subari Foster Services. Did I pronounce that right? Subari?
Yeah, one of them.
One of them?
Yeah, one of them. There are two other directors, so I don't want them to think that I'm
okay.
trying to...
So you're a director.
Accolade.
Okay.
I'm a director.
Thank you for making that clear. An independent fostering agency that has been changing lives. She's also the co-founder of My Life Stories.
100%.
I found that stuff as well. I was like, yay, go for Barbara. A project that helps children in care document and own their personal histories through This Is My Life workbook.
100%.
With over 2 decades of experience.
3
decades, see? Barbara has been a champion for children, especially Black children, navigating the care system. Thank you, Barbara, for accepting my invitation.
No, thank you for inviting me. As I said, for me, I'm really pleased to do anything that might help, whether that be children or whatever. I'll do what I can.
I appreciate that. So we start off with a little icebreaker.
Okay, that's good.
It's just a question. What is your favorite all-time film or movie?
Ooh.
And why?
It's either going to be Shawshank Redemption.
Classic.
Because that was just such a... it was a groundbreaking kind of like... It had me captivated from start to finish. Loved it and loved the different kind of like elements of it as well. I really did enjoy that film in terms of like the different characters, and I don't know the name of the actors, but the black guy in there who like was so profound in sort of like in just making that film I think what it was. So that's either my favourite film, or this is going to sound really weird, Hello, Dolly.
I've never seen that.
You would never see it because I'm old. So that was I went when I must have been about 5 or 6 to Marble Arch Cinema with my parents and saw the film Hello, Dolly with Barbara Streisand in it. And
I might have seen it, because I watched a lot of Barbara back in the days.
Old film.
Is it a black and white film?
It wasn't a black and white film.
Was it one of the first kind of...
It was one of the first...
Colours,
yeah. And I just love Barbara Streisand, which is just kind of weird, but yeah. So,
it's not weird at all. Yeah. What's weird about Barbara Streisand? Barbara Streisand is a...
And I think because she's my namesake, I think that's probably why it kind of like resonated
Stood out
with me.
For you,
So yeah, even though she's a white lady, but she's my namesake.
So what's Hello Dolly about?
It was just a musical.
Okay.
It was just a musical with Barbara Streisand singing.
Thank you for that, for sharing that with us. So Barbara, welcome. And let's start with your journey. Your journey into fostering and social work. What led you into this field? Did you always know you'd be working with children in care? Or was that a particular moment? Was there a particular moment that made you say, this is my calling?
My very best friend when I was an adolescent, her mum was a foster carer. And in fact, she was one of the first kind of black foster carers in Lambeth. She actually got an OBE or MB, whatever, for it. Yeah, she was one of the very first.
And that's your friend's mum?
My best friend's mum.
Gosh.
My best friend who later married my brother.
Okay.
She's now my sister-in-law.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, her mother was one of the very first black foster carers in Lambeth. And I remember just finding it all quite fascinating that, that she was looking after children and making a difference in their lives. And it was something that it resonated with me because I come from a very big family. I've got, your siblings are your siblings, whether both parents are the same.
Yeah.
So I've got about 15 siblings.
Goodness.
But there's 11 of us from my mum and dad.
Yeah.
And so our household was always lots and lots of, not just the children, but the children's friends. And so there was always lots of people who were connected in our household. So I loved the idea of caring for, just having people that, children and other children in the home that maybe haven't got those experiences like what we had.
I hear it, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, our experiences weren't great because we grew up in racist London. So, but because there was such a big family, we all protected each other. So yeah, so that was kind of my initial. This is what I want to do, but I hated school as an adolescent because it was racist and it was, you know, you just had a lot of people that my school itself wasn't very protective of us in that way. So when as soon as I did my GCEs, because it wasn't even GSC, I went to a grammar school, and I just wanted to leave. So I left literally just before my 16th birthday and got a job and went to work and stayed there for like 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah, stayed there I worked for Prudential Assurance Company.
Goodness.
Interestingly enough, that's still around somewhere
Yeah.
up in the city. I actually remember the address, which is really weird. As I just said that, I just remember the address, 142 Holborn Bars. How weird is that? How random. And it was after I'd had my daughter, I've got 2 children, after I'd had my daughter, I realised that I was literally brain dead in that job. It was just so boring. I was working in the mortgage department. It was so boring. And I thought, do something that you want to do. So I tried to look for a job within social care and couldn't get one because I didn't have any qualifications.
Gosh, yeah.
So that made me think, you have to go back and do something that you thought you hated. So I went and because I wanted to become a social worker, I decided that I'd sort of explored some routes, and it was like social work was the way that I wanted to go. I had to go and do an access course, and I actually did an access course in Brixton at Lambeth College. Best decision I ever made in my life. It was the first time I was actually amongst my own, because for 11 years I'd worked at the Prudential in the city, and there was, I think, in this massive building of thousands, there might have been 10 black people in total. But in my building, there was probably, in my team, there was none. It was just me. So for 11 years, I'd worked just with predominantly white people. And if you can imagine, so from 16 to like 26, I just wasn't exposed to, in my day-to-day, apart from my family and going out and things like that, but in my day-to-day. So now that I'm going to college and I'm integrating with other people of my own age that were the same, looked like me, and I was learning things about my history and my culture that I'd not been exposed to because I'd gone to an English grammar school.
Yeah.
So you know your history is not going to be included in that, and for me it was just like an eye opener, and it changed my whole life and my trajectory and where I was going to go from there on, and I remember just being really clear about what I wanted for my children and how I didn't want them to experience that that gap in who they are as people, and you know, making sure that they could see things that looked like them. And that pushed me even further in terms of like wanting to do that for other people. And I went back onto the trajectory of how can I become a foster carer? And so that was the initial kind of like journey.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's I wasn't expecting that. Yeah.
No.
What I was expecting, but yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you. How was your family about leaving school before 16?
In them days, it was just about leaving school and getting a job. My family never ever promoted
like that.
going to uni or.
Okay.
In fact, I lie. My elder sister, who went to the same grammar school as me, I remember my dad had really high hopes for her to go to university, but no one never really had any high hopes for me because, and I'm not saying that worries me, feel sorry for me, I wasn't a straightforward kid.
Yeah.
I never was a straightforward kid. I was the one that would always stand up and argue and always, you know, fight. And I was never, in fact, it was a shock that I actually ended up at the grammar school. And that, for me, was a fluke, but it wasn't. Like, now I know it wasn't, but at the time I remember thinking it was a fluke. Yeah. But what it was is that I was naturally quite bright academically, but I didn't know that because I was always known as the room-facing one, as opposed to my sister's known as one of my sisters,
academic one.
as the academic one. And then when in primary school we did our 11 plus, I think I've later found out that I got the highest in
that year.
I think nationally.
Oh gosh.
And so my primary school was proper races, made me head girl. It was like weird. For me, it just didn't fit.
Yeah.
Because I was the kid that was always getting in trouble. But
and then there's racism you were saying as well, and you still made head girl.
And I was aware even at that age that there was racism, because in school people was always calling you black this, that.
Gosh, what area was your primary school in?
It was in Kennington.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
And in your secondary school?
My
what
secondary
area?
school was Camberwell.
Gosh.
Yeah, so it was like, you know.
And we're talking about what, the 70s, 80s, 70s?
Yeah, 70s, early to mid 70s.
Okay.
And so I think, as I said, because I scored so highly in my 11 plus, I think they had no alternative but to make me head girl.
Yeah.
And that kind of like then put me on the path to, I'm now glad I went on that path, but I hated it.
Yeah.
Because my other siblings all went to the local comprehensive and had fun. And I went to this all girls where you had to wear, like, maybe that's why I'm into hats, because if you see me, you'll never see me without a hat, very rarely. But you had to wear like bowler hats and straw hats, and
Goodness,
your uniform was proper, like your dress couldn't be more than 1.5 inches above your knee. And so it was really, I hated every moment of my high school experience. I really did. And so as I said, it was a shock that I was academic, and because I never ever saw myself. But now I'm glad that I didn't go to the local comprehensive. I'm glad that I was exposed to
a different kind of education. Yeah.
Yes, which made, because I always sort of say there, but for the grace of God go I, when I see young people who haven't had a straight path. Because I do believe that it is the path that I happen to go on that has led me to where I am now, even if I didn't like all of it. So, yeah.
I hear it. Thank you. So what made you take the leap from being a foster carer to running your own foster agency?
Do you know what? So when I qualified as a social worker, I got an opportunity to become a professional foster carer. So I was a social worker for about 6 years.
And then you became a foster carer.
And then I became a professional foster carer.
What does that mean? What's the difference?
So the difference is that my role was, before, these were to take the children who would have gone into children's homes. So it was about doing some intense work with them, and working with those children that are really hard to reach, so that they could then go into mainstream foster care. Gosh. So you had the role they would come to you for about 6 months, and then you would like turn them around so that they can find their forever family. So that was my first introduction into as a foster carer. And I'm one of these people, Debbie, that if someone else can do it, so can I. And I remember one of the things I struggled with that role once I actually became a foster carer was that we weren't thinking of the children. Because how can you put them in my home for 6 months and then move them around like they're a lump of meat? And I remember thinking, this role sounds fantastic, and it was a great role, really well paid job from my perspective. They also gave us a house to live in, and so you had a house that was rent free. You was getting paid a wage as normal, and then every time you got a child, you got an allowance. So it was like great, but the way we treated children just was not sitting right with me. And because I think there was 4 of us, 3 or 4 of us who was professional foster carers, and they would just like move them around each, and I just think, these are children. How can you do this? How can you just treat them as if they haven't got a say? Because they didn't have a say. And if we wanted to go away, because I just couldn't. If they wanted to go away, they said, "Oh, Barbara, have this child for a couple of days," and it's like, I don't know them. They don't know me, and I struggled with that. So I did it for about just over a year, 18 months, and I became a mainstream foster carer myself. and was working for one of the biggest fostering agencies at the time, which was, they were called Foster Care Associates. And I thought, well, Barbara, you've got the skills. A lot of how they were working with me, I struggled with, because remember, I've been a social worker. I'd worked in the fostering team for, I think, 3 or 4 years. Then I became a professional foster carer, and then I'm working for a big agency who, for me, didn't know their arse from their elbow. So it was like, well, what would it take to set up your own fostering agency? And I remember my agency, when they heard that I was thinking about doing it, because the guy who I was working with was someone who I'd worked with when I'd first qualified as a social worker, and he'd gone to this agency and was a director, and then I was one of their foster carers, and it just was like, hell no. So I just thought, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I just thought, apply to do it. So I did. I just applied to set up my own fostering agency and did it.
Gosh.
It was probably one of the things about me is that I don't think about anybody who's involved in The Secret.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows anything about The Secret, I'd never even heard of The Secret.
Yeah.
But what I did was what The Secret advocates.
Yeah, aligned with that. Yeah.
All of what I dreamt of, I was doing, and it really aligned with that. If you're sitting there thinking about the house, you're never going to do anything. I don't do house too much.
Get on with it.
I just get on with it. If I want to do something, and so that whole fear element is never there, because I'm just like, well, I've got this qualification. I understand it. I care about children. I love children. So why not? And that's what I did. At that time, fostering agencies were regulated by CSky.
Okay.
Children's Social Care Institute or something like that. Ofsted wasn't involved in fostering agencies at that time, and all you needed was a registered manager, and you could also and a responsible individual, but you could be the both. You could be the registered manager, and you could be the responsible individual.
So we're talking about the 80s.
We're talking about it was
90s.
it was the 90s. I was when did I set up my? I set up my foster. It was 20 odd years ago, because I remember it was when I became a grandmother.
Yeah.
So I just thought, you're a grandmother, you can do what you like. And so I applied, and I became I own my own
foster agency.
fostering agency. I found premises in Merton, and what it kind of just catapulted from there, if you like, because I'd been a foster carer. I've never had to recruit a foster carer. Never had to do any recruitment. People just say, oh, they knew me, and so they knew that I would understand their journey, and so it just started from there, Debbie.
I hear it.
Yeah,
and I certainly can attest to you that actually of just getting on with it. 'Cause that's all I've ever known.
I just don't.
You're letting nothing hinder you.
I just don't think
it.
about. If I sit there and think to myself, how can you do this? I ain't gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I don't. I just think, well, somebody else has done it, so why can't you do this? And for me, I remember looking back at it now, and looking how, as I said, there's now 3 of us in my current agency. When we decided to do Subari, it was like, that's the learning from your mistakes. I set up, and I grew so quickly, so fast, so quickly. I burnt myself out within about 3 years. I really did. I think I had 40 foster carers.
Wow.
40 children. I worked like a good one. I was a practice teacher for new social workers. And so what I did, because again, when I set up 20 odd years ago, it was really, even though I had the knowledge, the social work knowledge, that I had no business acumen, none whatsoever. So I was just like getting on and doing it. And the local authorities weren't paying when they should have been paying. So I was really struggling finding the money to pay the carers, to pay the staff. I didn't have much staff, because I was using my students and whatever else and doing everything myself. So I was doing all the assessments myself. I was doing all the supporting the carers. Majority of that was being done by myself. And I think I might have taken on 1 or 2 staff members. but I was doing the majority of it. I was on duty 24/7.
Gosh.
24/7, and so that was hard. But I was just doing it. I was just doing it. It was like I didn't have any choice to just get on and do it. But I did have to. Now looking back, I had lots of choices.
Yeah.
I couldn't see those choices.
What
at the
made
time.
you clock or realize your burnout?
When I lost my agency.
Really?
Yeah. So what happened was the director of Merton Social Services, who knew that I'd set up my own business, because I was working my offices was in the same building where she was doing some work. She put me in touch with a large children's charity, is it children's charity? Young people's charity. And they wanted to go into fostering, and she said, "Oh, Barbara set up her own fostering agency. I've put you in touch with them." And so she put me in touch with this agency who they said, "Look, that when they saw what I was doing, they're saying, it's amazing what you're doing. We come and work together. We can work together." So it started off that I was meant to be helping them how to show what to do, to them saying, "We can work together and we can join forces. And if you've done all this on your own, you'll be a powerhouse with us." This is where the naive business, So I'm like, and I remember my husband saying to me, "Don't do it." And I'm like, "But Ray, I'm tired, I'm drained." They've said that they'll put in all the services, they'll put in all the support, and then we can grow mega. And the idea was that over a course of 5 years, we would be so big and they would buy me out over 5 years, and I'd be a mega,
Which
whatever.
kind of makes sense, the strategy.
The strategy sounded... So and they were saying, "Don't do it." And I'm saying, "But Ray, I'm so tired, I can't keep doing this, you know what I mean?" And everybody was relying on me. And I remember saying, I know I can't. And I felt totally burnt out at that time. And it felt like I was getting it was my answer to my prayers at the time when I was really struggling emotionally, mentally. And then this gift came along where this charity said, "We'll buy you out." So I signed it. I actually got solicitors and everything else signed on the dotted line, but didn't read the small print.
Oh, gosh.
Did not read the small print.
So what happened?
So in a nutshell, so we had this agreement where we was meant to split the profits. There were no profits. I was earning, I had over 40 foster carers, 40 children. There were no profits. The reason there was no profits because they'd assigned it all to all their expenses. So there's HR, they're this, they're that. So there was no profits.
Yeah.
What there should have been mega. There was no growth because I was the person with the expertise. It still was me working like a good one, but I was still the tired Barbara. And even though they were putting in staff, but the staff were just people that just wanted a job and
weren't doing the work. So you was doing the extra work, not getting paid, but the money was going to people that weren't.
The money was just going straight to them. So I remember we was meant to get profit share, sort of like, say, every 6 months or something like that. And I remember the first time when I I literally was in floods of tears. "What have you done, Barbara?" And on all their accounting had just taken every single thing. When they were doing it was all me, excuse my French. It was like, and and that was the kind of business naive wake up to, what have you done? What have you done?
Goodness.
Yeah.
What a journey.
Yeah. What have you done?
And you're still in the fostering agency industry.
Do you know what?
Journey.
Do you know what? I just think to myself, I just think I'm not somebody who cries for long. Yeah. So I cried on that occasion, but I'm not a crier.
Yeah.
I'm not. Do you know what? Put your big girl pants on. You made a mistake. Get up and with your life. Get up and go on with your life. And at that time, because when we joined forces, I signed that, whatever, that you can't set up,
or whatever
one of them agreements. So I couldn't reset up. I remember everybody saying to me, "Oh, Barbara, set up.
You couldn't set up again after that?
I couldn't set up within a certain period of time.
Goodness.
Yeah, couldn't set up within a certain period of time because I'd signed one of those agreements where you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I said it was a massive lesson, massive lesson. But in a way, I kind of needed to come away and grow for myself. And
It's probably best that you didn't. 'Cause you
yeah,
need time. All right, fair
yes.
enough. Everything
So
for a
it was
reason.
like my journey, I have no regrets.
Yeah.
It's all massive learning, massive learning.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, massive. Seriously, no regrets. It was like, you won't do that again. you know.
So what does Subari means?
Subari means patience rewarded. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's what that means.
What language? Where's that come from?
Swahili. Swahili, I believe. Yeah, patient. It was actually that Subari was chosen by my colleague Penny, and yeah, it means patience.
I thought so.
rewarded.
I don't know
It-
why.
It,
I
it
thought
sounds
like,
very
it
penny.
sounds like,
doesn't
yeah,
it?
it sounds
very
penny.
very penny. Yeah, patience rewarded. Yeah.
So black children are overrepresented in the UK care system.
100%. Yeah.
Why do you think that is, and what needs to change to better support them? Hey family, we hope you're enjoying the show. If you want to stay up to date with all things Black British Parent, we've got the perfect way for you to do just that. Join our mailing list and be the first to know about new episodes, exciting news, and upcoming events. It's super easy to sign up. Just head over to our website and into your email. Don't miss out on the latest from Black British Parent. Join our community today. Now, back to the show.
Why do I think that is? Oh, that's such a big question, Debbie.
It's a loaded one.
Yeah, such a loaded question because, I mean, black people are overrepresented everywhere. Black people are overrepresented. Black children are overrepresented in the youth, what they call the YOIs, the youth offending institutions. They're overrepresented in every in failing education, and when you look at black children overrepresented in most of the negative areas of, our lives, their lives, it just makes sense that they're also overrepresented in the care system. I think, like, for me, I want to bring this in because I think it's quite relevant. What I did when I lost my fostering service, I set up a residential parenting assessment centre.
Okay.
Because I said I don't sit down for long.
Yeah.
And at the time, literally at the time when that all happened, my cousin was very, very ill, and she with cancer. And I remember she said to me, her daughter, who was a good few years younger than me, was actually wanted to set up a parent and child home sort of thing, and she said, "Please help her, Barbara." And so I said, okay, and that was just kind of a bit of a distraction.
Yeah.
So, and in the course of that, I helped my cousin Faith to set up what is now Thai Parenting Services, which is a parenting assessment service, which we didn't know at the time. She thought she just opened up a mother and baby home, but it turned out it was you have to get regulated by Ofsted, and it's not just you can't just set up a mother and baby home. You have to set up what is called a family residential centre. But she lives up in northwest London, and obviously I'm south. So after I'd done that, I thought, oh, that was really interesting and really whatever. Let me do one for myself down in South London, which is what I did. So I set up a residential parenting assessment centre. And one of the reasons why I'm talking about that is because this is for families who are at risk of losing their children to social services. Their solicitors can argue for them to have a parenting assessment to measure their parenting capacity. And
so you'll stay in one of those homes
so you
during
stay
that process.
there so you literally come, and I remember we used to have four parents could come into at any one time, and they'd stay with us for 12 weeks, and you'd assess their parenting capacity. But whilst you're assessing them, one of the things that I realised that how can you assess people that ain't even got a parenting template? And that's what I realised, that a lot of us have not got a good parenting template for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But black parents, and young black parents more so, haven't always got, neither white parents, let me just be honest. But if you're saying why we've got racism, we've got discrimination, we've got so many other factors, then you haven't got a parenting template. So you've got children raising children, you've got children with lots and lots of other issues in their family that are not addressed, and then they're supposed to do well in school and they're not going to. And then if they are academic, and I go back to my situation, I never knew I was academic. It was just a fluke.
Yeah.
I ended up being head girl and ended up on the journey that I went on. If you're in an environment where you're not being stimulated, there's a high chance that you're going to be disruptive. And a lot of our children are extremely bright, but they're not being stimulated.
Yeah.
They're not seeing anything that looks like them in schools.
Even
today.
Yeah.
And you know my daughter does the books.
Woke Babies
and all of that. Because and
Melanin Magic.
Because it's all about advocating for our children to see representation of themselves so that they're stimulated in school. Yeah. Because that's a big journey, big part of their journey. Yeah. If we can have enough resources that can, from a very young age, stimulate our children, help them to feel that they are important, just as important, then that would address part of the reason why they're overrepresented. It might would. But one of the things I learned when I was doing the parenting assessment, as I said, was about being a role model for the parents that came into our home. And so for me, it was very much about, I developed my own parenting course for them, so that, and I remember everybody sort of saying, everybody should know, everybody should be able to, should have to go through this parenting course, so that, you know, just knowing about child development and just the basics and knowing about routine. And I remember I used to have a rule where there was no TVs allowed on until after 7 p.m. and when the baby, or when you've done everything attending to the child's needs, and put the baby to bed, then you can come down and watch a bit of TV. And I remember every single parent would say, no, we ain't doing this. My child needs to watch In the Night Garden. We need to watch this, because we didn't have all the Instagram and them
stuff, like we did now.
Like we do now. But everybody felt that they would die without the TV.
Yeah.
And
read a book,
read a
game.
book, play with your children. But do they even know how to play?
No. They didn't experience it themselves.
If they've never experienced it themselves. How much of our Caribbean parents play with us?
It's true.
How much, I know my parents never played with me.
I was kind of fortunate because my mum was still quite young.
Okay.
So she taught me how to play patball back in the day. Okay. And we used to sit down and do colouring in and stuff like that. So that was kind of my experience, but not any more than that. But most of us don't
My
really
mum
have
was
that
very
experience.
young, but she didn't play with us. Not I suppose because of her own experience, no one played with her. Yeah. So it's not about blaming anybody.
No, but it's just the experience.
It's the experience.
Right. Yeah.
How many of our parents played with us?
And now it's worse.
Yeah, now it's
everyone's on their phone.
Everybody's on their phone. Everybody's on their phone. Everybody's on their gadget.
Yeah.
Which winds me to living daylights up, because all of our children as well, what are they now? All ADHD.
Yeah.
All of our children have got ADHD or autism.
Yeah.
And what is that about? So when you're saying why are we overrepresented, I think that all of that plays a massive factor. We don't pay a lot of attention to the fact of how we interact with our children on a day-to-day from a very young age. Yeah. We don't put a lot of emphasis on that. And I think there needs to be much more of
100%
of awareness of that when you're having children. What is that relationship about?
Yeah. Why are you having children?
Why are you having children? What purpose is it for?
Enough people want to have children and they're still not doing the things
100%.
required. And I mean that with no judgment, but it's just an acknowledgement and observation of the reality, especially where the consequences are so strong now.
And I remember sort of like when I used to enforce, and I'm very much about routine, and even from if we'd get a parent in who had just had a newborn baby, and we would insist that they had to have a routine for that newborn baby, and they couldn't see it. But then when within 6-7 weeks that baby was sleeping throughout the night.
That gave them the peace.
It gave them the peace, and they could see what we were saying.
And they can manage their own mental well-being.
Absolutely. And we'd insist that they played with their children. Yeah. And if you didn't know how, we'd show you how.
Yeah.
So we would do it.
If you got your children up till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, what time do you have to yourself?
What time do you have to yourself?
You're consistently tired. Yeah.
And then the child is constantly tired because the child isn't getting their 12 hours sleep, because children need 12 hours. They don't need 8.
And by the time you realise it, it's going to be harder to get them into a routine because of what they're being used to from young.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I just think there's so many factors that why our children, and I know that this might apply to every culture, but I think
we're talking about black children.
We're talking about black children.
So yeah.
So and I just think so. I've always wanted to focus on that, and I said, and Kelly, my daughter, will tell you that as a child once, and I'm going to be honest and say my awareness grew when I went to the access schools. In fact, she was very, very young at that stage. So I then made a point of making sure, once I became aware of what factors might have impeded me, I made a point of ensuring that those factors weren't going to impede her.
Yeah.
I made a point of that and she'll tell people now, you couldn't give her a white dolly. You just could not put that in my house.
I love it.
You just could not put that in my house.
And do you know what, it's funny, because even during my time, I was parenting in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people. And it was so hard to have to hunt and find dolls or toys or books with black children. And when you made those requests, if you're going to buy anything for my child, make sure it's a black doll or a black book. And it just felt like he was being, especially even from my own community, well, my family, I'm saying my family, it was still like an odd concept for them.
100%.
You're supposed to just be able to accept what is already available in the store.
Because for me, she's going to see that through 100%. Her friends and through school. She's not having it in my home.
No,
End of
she
story.
needs to see
End of
herself.
story. She needed to see herself. She's not going to. And I was fortunate as well, because my son, who is 5 years older than her, there was like a lot of because I said once I went to Brixton Access, then I've got knowledge about Black history classes. I could send my son there and all of that, so that could just develop their own self-esteem and their self-confidence about who they are as people. And so for me, that's kind of like stayed with me in terms of like wanting to do that for as many children as I can, and wanting to give as many children as I can positive experiences. And fostering, what better way can you do it than fostering? You can't. You know, if you've got them in your own home, what better way can you do it? I would say with our Subari, we've only been running 3 years, our success rate is amazing with children.
I know this.
It's amazing. And I'm so proud of that. It's amazing with children in terms of like, you know, them feeling that they're cared for, genuinely cared for. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So there's a shortage of black foster carers. How can we encourage more black families to consider fostering?
I think we've got to change the perception of what fostering is. And we've also got to change the perception of how people see fostering, and also change the kind of support that we give to foster carers. One of the reasons I believe we've got such good success is the level of support and the recognition of what they do. We really recognise what they do in terms of like not devaluing them. Because as a foster carer, you've got to work with social workers for the children. And a lot of social workers are really quite not nice to the carers. They grudge them.
Gosh.
Seriously, they are, you know, sort of like, oh, they're only doing it for the money kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what? You work for nothing.
You're getting paid.
You're
for the
getting
same
paid
industry.
for the same thing. You're doing your role.
Yeah.
The foster carers are doing their role. Surely they'll be happier if they're nicely paid.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? They've got that child 24/7. They want to give that child really good experiences. It's great that if they can do that and not have to work to supplement their income, because if they're supplementing their income, then they can't give that child the 100% attention that they need to. And why are you grudging them when they're doing a job like that? That is a job that is a hard job.
Yeah.
Bringing a child into your own home and having that child having to find their space in your home. They don't know you from Adam. They don't necessarily want to be with you.
And
they
you don't necessarily know what the child's coming from.
You don't know what they're coming from all the time, you know. So I think it's a really difficult job, and what you get is more negative press about fostering than you get positive press, and so it's putting people off because they think it's poorly paid and not a lot of rewards, and that's the wrong perception. So for me, it's about changing the perception of foster care, and that's what we try to do in our agency. And I think also one of the reasons why I think we're as successful as we are is because there's no child that you're going to look after that I haven't had that experience. I've been fostering for 20 odd years, and I'm still fostering. And so there's no, if you're going to say, but you don't know what it's like, yes, I do. So I can support you because I know exactly what it's like. So I can offer you that real support because I know when you're feeling like this, I know what might support you to feel a bit better. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm just thinking as well, like the taboo around us with fostering, and I'm thinking, but we've been doing it unofficially anyway.
100%.
You know, when grandma take on a grandpicnic them because mum and dad, whatever situation, or auntie might take on a niece, or
Absolutely, absolutely. And we still do it even now. And but I want to bring money into it because I think
it's an important factor.
Money, so we don't like to talk about money. It's also taboo. But we need money to live. We need money to be able to give children really good experiences and what they need. You do need money. So for me, money is never taboo to me. It's not taboo because I think keep it real. Yeah. You know, sort
be
of
transparent, and it is what it is.
Yeah. And know that, you know, we shouldn't be looking after other people's children for nothing if that's our job.
Yeah. But we shouldn't be doing it for the money. We should be doing it because
our motivation.
Yeah.
One of the main things when you do a fostering assessment is what is the motivation. Yeah. And I think we can't mix up motivation in terms of like saying that just because you're getting rewarded, that's the only reason why you want to foster. You can't, you know, and I think people don't want to kind of look at it in the way that it goes hand in hand. Yeah. If you've assessed somebody appropriately, then you know what qualities they've got. Yeah. Have they got the skills, the experiences, the personality, the characteristics that is going to make them a safe parent? Mm-hmm. And if they've got that, then why should they not be rewarded for it? Yeah. That's just how I see it. Yeah. And so ultimately I'm looking at, whenever I go in to do an initial assessment of anybody who wants to be a foster carer, I'm in your house thinking, would I leave my child with you? So you won't know that. Yeah. But I'm thinking, am I comfortable with you? And would I leave my child with you? Would I leave my grandchild with you? If I wouldn't, forget it. If I'm with you and me and you're, I'm feeling relaxed with you. I'm seeing if you've got other children in your home, they look relaxed with you. Yeah. And I'm thinking the home feels, then it's
a nurturing environment.
Then I think, we can go to the next stage.
And I think that might be the difference between someone who's a black foster agency owner opposed to anyone else, because you're bringing it to a personal
100%. For me, there's the
maybe, I don't know.
There's the practical elements that you have to have the space. You have to have the physical space and as well. So those bits, and there's the obviously you've got to, you can't. The safe checks that you've got to do around references and making sure that, but just because you've had adverse experiences, that don't stop you from being a foster carer, providing those adverse experiences aren't against children. Yeah. And those adverse experiences are long enough ago that they're more a learning.
Yeah. You've learned from them, you moved on, you've grown from it, evolved from it.
Absolutely. So if when as a child or as a young person, you even got in trouble with the police, but it was like, say like it was, I don't know, fraud or something like that, that for me wouldn't stop me from thinking you could.
If it's something like violence or abuse of a vulnerable person,
absolutely, then forget it, because that's safeguarding.
That's interesting to know.
Yeah, that's safeguarding. But for me, if you've been in prison, how many of our black folks, especially black men, have been in prison when they were like in their teens and early 20s, but they're now in their 40s, 50s, and they're a partner to somebody who wants to be a foster carer. Why would you rule that out? Yeah. Surely that experience is going to help them to deter somebody else.
Especially with some of our young teens that are in care and stuff like that. Right. Yeah.
Will deter, and that's how I see it.
Okay. A lot of black children in care are placed with non-black carers. What are the biggest challenges in making sure that children don't lose touch with their identity, and what can carers do better?
It's weird because, I mean, like some of our carers have white children, and I don't see that in the same way as I see black children with white
Why
carers.
is that?
Because if our carer is in the British culture, then I think the white child culture is still being promoted, and the wider culture is predominantly white. So that will always be promoted in schools and everywhere else. I've got a big problem with black children with white carers, a really big problem with that, because I just think I can't see a white carer can give a black child that sense of self. It's going right back to, you don't look like me.
Yeah.
You can't have my experiences.
You don't understand what it takes to take care of my skin, my hair.
Yeah.
Racism.
Absolutely. And not only that, just going back to there was that experiment, this old experiment, that experiment where they have a load of black doll and white. They always choose the white doll.
Yeah.
So when you got black kids in a white environment,
It's going to program their mind a certain way.
And they dislike themselves. They hate that whole self-esteem. They don't like themselves. They feel uncomfortable. So they're the only black child in that environment. And we've got a couple of children at the moment, actually, who's now come to black carers who were in that all-white environment for a good while. One of them wanted to be white, hated her skin. And I remember she came into our... when she came to us, she was 10. And the referral said things like, she don't know how to comb her hair. She don't know how to... the average 10-year-old kid don't know how to comb their hair. And if you've been with a white family, of course she don't know. And it was all really quite negative about she doesn't know how to cream her skin. She didn't want to cream her skin because she don't see you creaming your skin. So if she's in your
And the cream you're
home,
providing probably wasn't doing anything for her anyway. But the point is that she wasn't nurtured in an environment where
if
it reflected that.
you put a black girl in an environment where you've got, so this particular carer, say like she had a daughter who was like a few years older, long blonde hair. Or I know I've got blonde hair, but don't watch that.
Yeah.
It's not. Don't watch that. It's not nothing to do with, you know what I mean. It's not because I don't want my don't like my black hair. I've got locks. So just this is real locks, by the way, people. Real locks. No, pretend one. No. Even though I've got the hat on, it's my locks. So let me just be clear about that. Locks. Ja Rastafari, auntie. No, but if you've got a black child who has afro hair in an environment with a older white
with blonde
hair,
European hair,
and your family don't cream their skin because the average white folk might not, you're going to think that and they're telling you cream your skin, you're going to feel the odd person out. You're not going to feel comfortable about them, and those are the things that I think that you're not looking at. And when the white carers may have really good intentions. So I'm not saying it's not about that. They may have, but I just think they don't understand that whole journey for a black child in a white environment.
The ones that might do, it's taken a lot for them to get that understanding.
Absolutely.
And so we're not even addressing those that do, but the ones that clearly don't.
And I think even if you've got good intentions, I just think that So I would be saying, you black potential carers out there, think about, have you got the space in your heart, the space in your home, the motivation to give a child, the same experiences that you've given your own children, hopefully if that experience is positive. Think about, could you be a foster carer? Just think about it. It can be really, really rewarding. It can be, and just seeing a child thrive from, coming into an environment where they might feel a little bit lost, and then you take them to a situation where they're now doing really well. Just think how that might feel. Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine there's some of us that have, like, our children have moved out and moved on, and there's space. So
absolutely,
there is room.
Absolutely, which is why I'm still fostering, because my house was a bit empty, and my husband was bored with me, so which is why we've got foster children in our home right now.
Oh, that's lovely.
So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Even though my grandchildren say, "Hi, Nan, why, Nan? I want the room back, Nan." No, I don't want my grandchildren. You're too big. You're big people now. Let somebody else have a go.
Oh, it's beautiful. I appreciate that. So, have you seen cases where black children have faced racism in foster placements or within the system itself? You've kind of touched on it a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
How should carers and agencies handle this?
I think, you know, sort of like, if you do have to place a black child in a non-black environment, you need to pay more attention to what's going on when you've done that. I think you can't just, because when children are placed in any with any foster home, after a while, even though they're still being seen by the social workers, there's a step back to just let them get on with it.
Yeah.
And unless something happens, no one's paying
Gets involved.
attention to what is really happening for that child. So you might hear that the child is maybe acting out in school or whatever else, but really looking about what that's about. Yeah. Really, you know, so if you're going to make those decisions, really think about it, because that particular child that I was talking to you about, that was meant to be her long-term carer. Gosh, that was meant to be a long-term carer, and you know, thankfully, it wasn't. But that was meant to be the long-term carer, and I think it's too easy for us to kind of like. You've got placement teams that make the decision to
and you think they'll make a better assessment,
and you know they're doing it with the best intentions, but sometimes you're placing children in an emergency and you're just taking what's available and you want to go home, but you need to. I think there should be like review meetings about each child to sort of like. They do have LAC review, which is looked after children review meetings, but I think there needs to be sort of like different types of meeting to kind of like really look at how many children have we got in non-same race. Are there any issues? Just, you know, I think there needs to be, something like that.
Do you think that there's like gaps in the training for foster carers that are perhaps looking after children that are the same race as them?
100%. I think it's that same thing that I said. The child is placed, and if you sort of say you've got a black child with a white carer, and you sort of say they need to be moisturised, you know, so. And you say, I just think there needs to be, I think it just needs. There's a lot, Debbie. There's a lot that needs to.
A lot that needs to go.
Yeah, it is. There is. Really is.
That's so like heartbreaking, because I just think about, you know, for those of us that care for our own children. Biological children, our own children, that we've been creaming our babies from birth. Do you know what I mean? It's a ritual that we've always gone through, and to know that now that children, through no fault of their own, are in a system and they're not getting the adequate care.
And I don't want to, as I said, some carers mean well, but they just don't. Our journey is so unique and individual.
But the thing is, we make a point of saying these things, and they make it seem like we're being overzealous or reverse racist or
100%.
Do you understand all these things? And they don't really fully understand, but they say we're all the same, and we're not. It's okay to be different as well.
Absolutely.
That's what I mean.
And I think if you place a white child in a black family, that white child isn't going to grow up hating who they are.
No,
they're not going to grow. They're
not going to hate black people.
They're not going to hate black people. So that's why. I just think that way around is less emotionally harm to the child, whereas most black children who are raised in all white environments grow up not liking who they are. Yeah,
and there's a weird issue with white people. There's a film, was it called Farming? I think it was set around the time back in the 80s or 70s when African families were leaving their children in England and going back home, and it wasn't even a proper fostering sort of situation. It was just left with a white person. And
you grow up sort of like just not valuing who you are and not even knowing who you are.
So you created this amazing resource for children in care. This is My Life Workbook. What inspired it, and how has it helped black children in particular?
So, as I said, I've been a foster carer myself for over 20 years, and one of the kind of statutory requirements for children that are looked after, full stop, regardless, is about them understanding their journey, in their care journey. And the whole reasons for needing to understand your care journey is if you can understand your journey, that's as to why you weren't able to live with your birth family and your parents. Because when you grow up in care, regardless, everybody wants to be with their birth family. That's, that's just it's a natural kind of thing that you want to be. You want to be around people that look like you, want around people that can tell you things about, when you was baby, when you was this, and your uncle and your auntie and your gran, and so life story work is something that local authorities, fostering agencies are regulated on and when during inspections. And historically, there's not been a resource that enables that to be done in a way that a child could feel valued. So years and years ago, but even relatively recently still, children's journeys used to be collected in what was called a scrapbook, which if you've got a child who already has self-esteem issues and whatever else, and then you're collating photos, memorabilia and everything like that in a scrapbook, it's kind of like reinforcing that they're rubbish, because what's scrap? And being a foster carer myself, I've always tried to kind of keep memorabilia and help a child to understand their journey whilst they're with me. And I've always tried to help them to retain a relationship with their parents where they can, and retain a positive view about their parent, regardless of what their parents' issues
it's their
are.
birthright. Yeah.
It is. So even if mum and dad have like massive issues, that shouldn't make you feel like shite.
Yeah.
But it does make a lot of children feel like the rejection at the end of the day, even if it's the local authority that removed them, they're still feeling rejected from their parents. And with our black children in particular, like you say, if they've been placed in environments that are alien to them and that with people that don't look like them, it's even harder. So what I wanted to do was to create a resource that made them feel that, if we're putting our memorabilia and pictures and things, it's something that is nice. So something that makes them feel good about themselves, and a way of them being able to hold on to something that is tangible and that they can take with them and so forth. Yeah.
That's awesome. Where can people get hold of your book?
You can get it www.mylifestories.co.uk. And I'm terrible at Instagram, that shows my...
We're going to put all the details in the caption anyway, but yeah.
Can I just show it a little bit?
Have you got a book?
Do you know, so I'm going to be honest and say I was meant to bring you a book, and it's Saturday and I do contact for my children.
It's okay, but you've got a copy that we can show.
I've got this that I can show, so I kind of took this out of my house.
Oh, wow.
Took this out of my house.
That's so beautiful.
And it's to show that it says, this is my life, and it's got silhouettes of various people, even one in a wheelchair somewhere on the book.
It's down at the front here.
It's down at the front here, one in a wheelchair. And it's about sort of like, it's really quite inclusive. It's enabling children, young people to, and I've turned to the back, remember their past so that they can cement their future. If you know where you're coming from, it will help you to know where you're going. And so let me give some credit to one of my foster children that I looked after from when she was 8. She's now 28. We did it together as well.
Yeah.
So Paige is one of my, she's my daughter, because I actually, when she was 15, I became her parent. I took a special guardianship out on her because she's my daughter. And so yes, we did lots of this together. It's clippable. It's got memorabilia pockets in here. I won't show it.
Is it a blank one, or is it
It's
someone's
not
got
a black
stuff in
one,
it?
so I won't show it fully because it's got some
People's work in
people.
it. It's got stuff in there.
Yeah, it's got stuff in it, but
it gives you some idea.
It gives you some idea, and it's got pockets where you can actually hold things in. You can hold, put memorabilia. You can put,
little pictures or memories or tickets or things.
Things like that in there, and
that's so
it's got
awesome.
loads of different sections. Yeah, and so talks about your name. You can write about your name, where you got your name from and why, what it means to you, and so forth.
I love that you can see the silhouettes and it's not typically European.
No, it's
100%. It's like bloody bubble African.
absolutely.
But there's no colour.
There's no colour.
There's no in terms of brownness.
So
I love that.
yeah. And as I said, you zip it up so you can keep things safe. It's got a little handle so you can carry it safely as well.
So we need more foster agencies.
Yeah, so let me bring up Lambeth and say Lambeth have just recently invested in it for their looked after children. So we give Lambeth fostering team a real big up to invest in it for their children, because we know that Lambeth has got a big community of children, and hopefully other local authorities. But it's not. Let me just also go back a bit. It's not just about looked after children.
Yeah,
All children can benefit from knowing about their history. It's a real bonding tool. So if you're sitting down there with this book and you're going through sections about your journey with them, their journey, can you imagine how that's going to really help your relationship with your child? And so if we're talking about our children being highly represented in the care system, if we can start that journey from young, where we're building a relationship with our children from young, because how much time do we take to build relationships with? Do we even? Yeah. So if you can do that from young, whether they're looked after or not,
this is brilliant.
Yeah.
People.
Do you know what I said? I was meant to bring let me just grab this one from my house for the little girl that I'm looking, one of the girls that I'm looking after at the minute. And so hence the reason why I can't show it fully.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah, but
thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
And well done, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you.
For letting me show it, because as I said, for me, I'm all about building relationships with your because I think that will go a long way. I don't think we put enough emphasis on those conversations that we have with our children. I really don't think we do.
Yeah.
And I think if we can start that from young, having those conversations, having conversations about who they are, why, your journey.
Yeah.
So they can understand, even if like mum or dad isn't about, so they can understand why that is the case, and that will help them to kind of like feel more cemented in themselves,
and hopefully not take it personally and take themselves to blame. They realise it's stuff outside of them.
Children do that a lot.
Yeah.
Blame themselves for the breakups. I mean, my granddaughter, I got her to do one because her mum and dad are not together. So that's my son's daughter. She was raised by my son, and and she said that it was doing this and asking her mum some hard questions as to why she didn't end up living with her. That really helped her to kind of like feel better about herself, because she felt rejected by her mum. Because if you can imagine a young girl being raised by her dad.
Yeah, and it's not normal.
It's not normal.
It's becoming more normal now, but it's still not really
considered. That's right. And
so the mum is meant to be looking after the children,
allegedly.
Genuinely.
It left her with so much questions about why she felt rejected, and particularly because in her situation she had older sisters who weren't my sons, who were being looked after by her mum. So she felt but it was her. Don't get me wrong, it was her choice to live with her dad. Yeah. But just as you get older, you start questioning. Yeah. And so it really helped her to kind of like make sense of that journey. Why and so now at 21 she feels a lot more sane than she did, and she don't feel as rejected as she did. Yeah. And our family, the nature of families are so diverse, aren't they? And the nature of black families are so diverse. Yeah. So we need to find a way of having conversations, and this is a really good tool. So when I was doing it had that in mind about having that, so we can start. So
you don't have to do it on your own.
No,
and you don't have to have someone breathing in your neck doing it, but you've got a resource that can help you.
To kind of like help you, to guide you, to to sort of like, and like I said, it's a massive bonding tool. Created by
a woman who has many years in the social work industry, and by someone who was looked after by same said woman, and it's open for everybody. Like that's just, oh my gosh, where was this when I was raising my problem? They're not probably a bit too old now. They're like looking like, Mum, come on now. But that's amazing.
Yeah, no, I just think, for me, like I said, for me, you at the beginning you asked me about my journey, and I was
Yeah.
saying to you about I'm
I
one.
was wondering what was that in your bag, but I didn't want to ask too much because big woman questions.
You was asking me about my journey, and I'm somebody. Well, if I want something, I don't wait for it to.
Yeah.
I'll go and create
Yeah.
what is needed. And for me, what was out there wasn't anything.
cutting it.
So I just thought to myself, well, create it yourself, Barbara. And so that's what I do. You know, if I, you know, I'm not going to sit there and wait until the sun goes down.
If you could make 3 major changes to the foster care system for Black children, what would they be?
What would they be?
Kind of like repeating these questions on you a little bit.
Do you know one of the things that I think works for that I've found that has been really quite beneficial is about having groups for children. So in terms of like getting children together and having someone in that group who can help them to speak their
Truth.
speak their issue, be able to talk.
Yeah.
So like in my fostering service at the minute, we've got a lot of mentors, and Paige, my daughter, she's one of them as well. And we've got young people. We've got a young person who is not only care experienced, but is also his history is crazy, but so beneficial for helping our children to know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
So I think there should be just more of that. That would be like a forum for our Black children.
Yeah.
There isn't one, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
There isn't a forum for our Black children to kind of like speak out about what their issues are, what's going on for them. Mm-hmm. So instead of acting out, speak out.
Yeah.
So that would be one. It's hard. Just thinking on my feet now.
That's all right.
I'm just finding it hard.
I think that one you suggested was a big one. We can move on. That's all right. I appreciate that. I wasn't even expecting that as that concept. Okay. For anyone that's listening who wants to help, whether or not they can foster, what are some ways that can support Black children what are some ways that they can support Black children in care and make a real difference?
Anyone that's listening, well, if you've got a spare room, I think try and think about becoming a foster carer.
Yeah, and if you can't,
think about being a foster carer. Think about being a support for somebody who might be a foster carer.
That could be just an ear on the phone.
Yeah, because judgment. I mean, as a foster carer, it's a 24/7 job.
Yeah,
and sometimes that listening ear is a real help. When our children, there's so much going on out there for our children. Mm-hmm. Our children are going through so much. Like I said, there's so many, 20 years ago when I was a foster carer and we thought that children had issues, and the issues what children are presenting with now at a very young age is mad.
Different things, yeah.
It's mad. The issues that children are, when I see a referral for a child who's like 7 and that child is kind of like the dysregulation that they're going through and that they're presenting, it's like, what happened before then? Do you see what I mean? If you've got a friend who's got children and, just check in on them even, whether they're looked after or not. Check in and see whether or not they need any help. Mm-hmm. Because, as I said, what's going on out there for our children it's very different to how it was, 10, 15 years ago. And it's making it harder and harder to place children. And if it's harder and harder to place them, then they end up in children homes. And if they end up in children homes, then they're not being raised. They're just there, existing. And so we want children to be raised in family-type environments. We really do. We don't want our children to be raised in children homes. We really don't. And not only that, because if you think about what's going on out there in, say, gangland and everything else, we want to deter our children from thinking that the gang leaders are their parents. We don't want that. So we want them to have us as their parents who will guide them in the right way.
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
We're coming to the end of our podcast. Please, if you have a message for Black British parents or Black British caregivers.
Do you know what? Our children are our future. And if we're a parent, then our children definitely are our future. And we need to be a bit more supportive of each other, because I think that don't assume that your friend, your neighbour is doing as well as you might think that they are. And if they are doing well, don't grudge them. See whether they can help you. See whether they can help someone else. I think we just got to be a bit more inclusive and supportive to each other. I think, and where, like, organisations like yours, Deb, I think that we need to be really, really backing you and the things that you do. I think we can't just sort of sit there and think, oh, Debbie's all right. We've got to think to ourselves, you know, what can we do to make sure that what Debbie's doing is all right? Because you're taking your time out and you're trying to bring awareness to so many issues. Let's back you on that as much as we can. You know what I mean? And I think we need to kind of, so yeah, let's be just more supportive and of each other, because I do find that my experience is that we're not necessarily, that we even a little red eye sometimes can be, and I think that's not me as an individual. My whole thing has been around trying my hardest to make a difference in a small way, but I'm more about supporting people than bringing people down. And if I see you doing well, I want to help and champion that than anything else. And I think if we can all be like that with each other, let's you know, I think, yeah, let's try and
100%.
Yeah,
I think it's for us, those that are like this, to set the foundation so that others can come and join on to us doing that.
Definitely.
But we're working through that now.
Yeah,
so,
and I think that's what I would love to see, just us as a community, just really, you know, if there are gaps in people's parenting, don't cuss them, support them,
educate them, share wisdom, share knowledge,
share wisdom, share knowledge, share experience. 100% do that. And if you don't know have it yourself, there are organisations that can do
that.
it.
Yeah,
you know. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Please let our followers, our listeners, know how they can get in touch with you and get in touch with Subari Foster Care Agency.
So Subari.
Sabari, sorry, I'm saying Subari.
I only know website, so I don't know anything other than website.
That's all right, but we'll put the information underneath.
Okay,
Just mention website.
So website would be www.subarifostercare.co.uk.
That's SUBARI.
fostercare.co.uk. And www.mylifestories.co.uk.
Okay. We'll definitely have the link in the caption as well.
Because I am just so old school with knowing.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned from a lot of Barbara's experiences and wisdoms in the foster agency. And we do need more Black foster carers, even if it's just for a short period. You can do it for a year or 2 years, just to help out and, you know, give our children a better chance. Until next time, please take care of yourself and be safe.
Cheers, bye bye. Thank you.